In this show, we'll look at using ChatGPT to generate some Terraform to create some Azure resources. It's kind of a side show to a show that I did before with the very similar content, but we were using Bicep in that show. You can check out that show if you'd rather use Bicep and not Terraform. There's also some things in that show specifically regarding the KeyVault that I won't go into so much depth in this show. This show will stay mainly focused on just the IaC, just the Terraform. So what we're going to do is create these resources. So it'll be an app service, a KeyVault, and a storage account. And we're going to the app service will connect to those resources using User Assigned Managed Identities with relevant roles. And yeah, like I mentioned, we're going to use Terraform to create all of these resources. And then there's another show, like a follow-on show, that actually creates code which will run in the app service. You can check out that show here. And in that show, it just creates the very simple API that runs so that we can verify that it all works, that app service can talk to that storage account and get secrets from the KeyVault. So let's get started. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that I'm not a Terraform expert. If you are and you can see some ways to improve what we end up doing here today, make some comments below. I've done a fair bit of ARM templates, but part of what I wanted to demonstrate today is you don't need to be an expert with the technology to get started when you leverage ChatGPT to help you get started. So when I did the Bicep show, I created a GitHub repository, which is this Azure IaC that you can see here. Link in the show notes. You can look through the history there. You can see there's a Bicep folder, and I've now created a Terraform folder locally. As I went through that previous show, I kept a history in this ChatGPT prompts file of the things I was putting into ChatGPT to improve the code it was generating. And we ended up with something that worked. So we're going to do the same thing here today with Terraform. And in fact, I'm actually going to start with exactly what we started with before, except obviously we want to create Terraform templates. And a PowerShell script to run it. That's the resources that are needed. And I'm going to begin with user naming convention. I'm going to tell ChatGPT to use a naming convention like this. User naming convention like this. And let's throw that at ChatGPT and see what it generates. It's helpful if I actually give it the naming convention. You probably noticed that I skipped that. I've obviously added it back in and regenerated it. And this is what it's given us. So there's a main.tf file, which is going to generate, looks like a resource group, the storage account, a UMI, an app service plan with an app service. It's assigning the user the UMI, and it's also giving a blob contributor role. So in the outputs, there's an outputs.tf file and a variables.tf file. So we're going to do, and a PowerShell to run through and run all of that. So what I'm going to do is create these files in the Terraform folder and copy the code in there. So here we have our script, PowerShell script, that's going to execute the Terraform. Now the path that it's in, I've just cut and pasted that into there to make it quicker. But it says it needs to be the path to where your Terraform files are. I'm just going to leave everything as it is, and I'll go git status. So we've updated the prompts with what we put into ChatGPT, and we've got the Terraform files. The prompt also needed this. Okay, now I'm going to commit that. So if you care to check, this is the baseline, the very first output from ChatGPT. So we'll just git add all. I'll just make sure that that looks good. Commit it. So initial Terraform commit, and push that up to the repo. Okay, and then let's run it. Let's run this script, which will be in the Terraform folder. Run Terraform, and let's see what errors we get. Oh, lots of them. All right, let's dig in and see what these errors are. Duplicate variable declaration. Okay, what does that mean? If I go into variables, we've got a resource group name here, and if I search, there's a lot of usage of it, but it's also declared here. All right, so let's try and understand what's going on here. That resource group, I'm going to take variables and chuck that there so I can look at both at the same time. That's got a description, a default. The default is the same. This looks better. I don't think that's necessary, so I'm just going to take that out of there, rerun, see if we get different errors. What ChatGPT gives you is not always 100%. Expect it that there will be errors, and then you can correct them along the way. So now that I've done that, I can come in here and say that this var is duplicated, and it will generate some new code that doesn't duplicate that. Now this appears to have run. It's got deployment complete. I don't know what all of these, what all of this means, but let's go and take a look in Azure and see if the resources have been created. So using the resource group name and coming into my subscription, I've gone into resource groups and searched for that resource group, and it doesn't exist. So it clearly failed to do the deployment. The deployment completed, yes, but there were errors. So this is one, but let's go a bit further up and we'll find sort of our first problem if we can. Whoops, that's going a bit too high. So this is when we ran the PowerShell script the second time. That all looks good. Deprecated resource, so we'll want to address that, but that's not an error. I think this is the error here. So subscription ID is a required provider. I'm performing that. So now I don't quite know where I need to put that subscription ID, where I need to define it. So I'm just going to tell ChatGPT I get this error, and should come back and tell me where it needs to go. Or maybe it was already there. So it's in the main.tf at the top by the looks of it. Did I just, oops. Did I just not see it? Nope. So let's grab this new main.tf stuff. Actually, it's just this section that we'll need to add in. All right, so I'll just go ahead and fill in the necessary details and then cut back. All right, so I've put my subscription, the subscription ID there, filled in with the subscription ID that I'm using. I'll run that in a minute. We're not using a service principal, so we don't need the client ID in secret. So it's worth noting that I'm connected in PowerShell. So I've done an AZ login. That's how I'm automatically connecting. Not automatically, but that's how I'm connecting to Azure. So you would need to either use a service principal, or if your account has access, then you need to use AZ login to connect before running. All right. So let's try it again with that change. So the main change here now is the subscription ID. We will get this Azure deprecated resource fixed. So I can copy that now really, and whilst it's generating. So again, we're going to throw the error at ChatGPT. So it's given us this new Azure RM service plan, as opposed to Azure RM app service plan. So we'll just replace what we've got. Instead of doing that, I'll just have a quick look. Okay, so my IDE is telling me that it doesn't like a few things. OS type is not specified and SKU name not specified. And SKU name not specified. Yep, it says it's required. Resource group, storage account. Here we are. Okay, so perhaps this one will be better. Still going. Okay, you can stop now. Right. Grab that one. Okay, SKU F1. So obviously we don't need SKU anymore. What does it say? Blocks of type SKU are not expected. So I'm just going to tell ChatGPT in case when it generates if we ask it to generate any more changes, then it knows not to use that. SKU is not expected. Okay. Now, what did it say? Yeah, we're correct. Okay, good to know. And it's generating a new one. Okay, we don't need to see that. We've got that there now. We'll delete this and let's try again. Now, PowerShell, we've got these. Okay, well, let's just try. Before I try, what's changed here? We fixed the app, the farm declaration in TF. Okay, that'll do. Now we'll run that again. So I did that commit and we'll do a push so that if you want to see the differences in the repository, you can. Okay, so we've got a bunch of warnings completed. There's an error. TF plan is a plan file. Okay. The first error that it's got for us is this reference to the undeclared resource on line 48, which is this guy here. And now in the IDE, it's not blue, so that obviously suggests there's a bit of a problem with this. And so that, I think, is what's not been declared elsewhere. And it should map back to the service plan. So this is what it should be called, I believe. Now it's still white. So this service plan has an underscore and this one doesn't. So these are the little things that ChatGPT can sometimes you just need to be careful, particularly as you change things, give it more information and get a regeneration back. It can have some errors. So let's try that again. See if we have any more luck. It says the configuration is valid. So I'll just pause the video while it generates. It looks like it's going to run. So once it completes, we'll take a look at what's happened in Azure. Okay, so we've got some outputs showing in the terminal, and it looks like it executed without error. So taking a look in my subscription at the resource groups, we should see our new resource group, and we've got an app service, storage account, KeyVault, and sorry, not the KeyVault, app service plan, and the UAMI, the User Assigned Managed Identity, which is used to connect to the storage account. So let's take a quick look at the storage account. We also tried to assign permission for the UAMI to access this storage account, and there it is. It's a storage blob data contributor, so that'll allow it to update and read blobs. So that looks good. And on the app service, that should have been defined as an identity in the user assigned identities. And this is one of the approach I am using at the moment with the user assigned managed identities, is that one UAMI provides access to one Azure resource, in this case the storage account. And so if your web app needs to access multiple things, and we'll look at this in a moment with the KeyVault, you can see all of the things all the resources that it needs access to by coming in here and looking at the user assigned managed identities. And if you look at the user assigned managed identity, it's kind of the reverse. You can look at the resources that have been given permission to access it, which is kind of useful. Okay, so our Terraform has worked. The next step is to add in the KeyVault. So what do we do there? One thing to note is that when I ran the Terraform and it created the resources in Azure, it's created a tfstate file, log file, and a tf plan. Like I said, I'm not an expert on Terraform, so I'm not going to touch on any of that during this show, but I just did want to make you aware that it has been created, and that's how Terraform tracks what has been created already in Azure, so it can generate differences when the next time you run it. It's not going to try and recreate everything brand new. Okay, so next step is to create a KeyVault, and I've pretty much cut and paste what I used for the bicep show, except I've obviously removed bicep from the name. So let's chuck that into ChatGPT. So it's that works. Now add a KeyVault named this, and a UAMI named that, and it should have these roles. Okay, I'll just run that. And it should give us some updated Terraform. No, I don't, because I don't want to replace a subscription ID again. I'm not going to cut and paste the whole thing. I'm just going to grab the KeyVault code. That's blob contributor. That looks like the end of it. So let's just try grabbing this. This has got a KeyVault, the managed identity for the KeyVault, and role assignments. So, like I said, we'll cut and paste that into here. KeyVault, and rerun. Okay, so there's some code in there for tenant ID. So I'm going to have to put that in there. So you can grab that from Entra ID. Your tenant ID is what we want. So I'm just going to grab that, go back to where we were, paste that in. Now normally you'd put this in a variable somewhere and not just cut and paste it like that, leave it hard coded. Let's try that again. Oops. Run. Valid, and well, it's going to run again. Check back in again once it's complete. Okay, that's done. Let's take a look in the resource group. No errors, took about 2.5 minutes. We've now got a KeyVault and a KeyVault UAMI. Taking a look at the KeyVault, there's one thing that's important. This is the UAMI, so we'll just check that it has been associated to the web app, and it hasn't yet. And I think probably because I didn't tell ChatGPT to do that, so we'll do that in a sec. And looking at the KeyVault, the access configuration is important, and it needs to be this role-based access control. So similarly to when I did this for Bicep, the default that ChatGPT gave us, or the default that is used with the basic Terraform, is to use the vault access policy. And you have to choose one or the other. Because we're using User Assigned Managed Identities, we have to have it as this. So there's two changes we want to make. We want to tell ChatGPT that we want to make. We want to assign the KeyVault UAMI to the app service, and we also want to change the KeyVault, so that it uses RBAC. Okay, so that's generated, and this is the new KeyVault code. So we'll just compare that with the one below. Need to copy in our tenant ID, and it doesn't like this. Soft delete is not enabled, so I'm just going to get rid of that because I don't really care whether it is or not. It is important to consider it, but for this demonstration, it's not important. And there we go. So I'm going to try and run that now. That took a number of goes to make a change, try it out, watch it fail. I just didn't think there was enough value in showing all of that, so I'll just show you the summary. Basically, this access policy that's been defined here, we need that to be equals an array and empty. And we also need this enable RBAC authorization to be true. I found that in the Terraform documentation. And it's very similar to what was required for the Bicep as well, enable RBAC authorization. So that code should make it work. This purge protection enabled is a separate problem. You want that to be false. That's important because if you ever need to delete the KeyVault, and in this case, I do need to delete it because you can't change the permission model from access policy to RBAC, you have to delete it and then recreate. And if purge protection is enabled, which I had originally, you can't delete it. So I'm going to go in and just give this a new name, dash terraform, and same with down here for the for the UMI. So we will actually get a new one, and then we'll rerun it. Now I'm going to run that. I have actually previously run it, and so I've already got a -tf KeyVault. So I want to show you what we can do to solve that problem. Here's the error that you're going to get if you try and change the permission model on an existing KeyVault. You're not allowed to change the permission model. So if we come in here, check out our new KeyVault and delete it. Then if we come out to KeyVaults, get rid of those. You want to manage your deleted KeyVaults for the subscription. We're looking for our -tf one. And so this is the original one that I had, and I can't purge it because it's protected. So, but the new one didn't purge protect it, so I can remove it. Now, purge protection is a good thing in production, but not so much in development. And once you've stabilized the change that you want. I'm going to now purge that, because if you don't purge it, then when Terraform goes to create it, there'll be a conflict. Okay, this time we now have removed that. So now I'll try rerun it. There isn't a KeyVault there at all. Done. So let's take a look. Come out here, home, and our resource group, and the KeyVault. Access configuration is now RBAC. So we'll just commit that. Okay, and in the access control, are there any role assignments? Yes, we've got the KeyVault's secret user and the reader. Okay, and is our -tf UMI associated with the app service? Come in here and identity, and we've got the KeyVault one, but it's now lost the storage account one. So let's just add that back in. So it looks like there's a naming problem. This is the one, dev KeyVault Azure IaC bicep. Somehow that name snuck in there. That's the one that's here, and that provides access to the storage account. So that's UMI is the name of it, and it's being added here. And then the storage account, sorry, the KeyVault one, so that's the storage account one. The KeyVault one was created down here, and it's called UMI KeyVault. So this is the one we want to add, and that one's -tf. So I assume we can just do a comma, Azure RM user KeyVault. No, we already got that there. .id. Okay. Rerun. And that's completed. So we'll come back here, back to our resource group, refresh. So we now have the two, obviously poorly named. So this one should have SA rather than KV, but they're both there. And on the app service in identity, we've only got one assigned, so it hasn't successfully added it. So let's find out why. There must be something wrong with my syntax. It all looks right to me. So the identity IDs are referenced correctly. I've added to the outputs file the storage UMI ID and the KeyVault UMI ID, and both of these are coming through here and look correct. So that one for the storage one goes to that bicep one, and the KeyVault one has the -tf. Tried reapplying and it still doesn't go on. So what I'm going to try now is to delete the web app and recreate it fresh to see if that helps. Okay, so I've deleted, rerun the apply, and we are still not having the UMI, extra UMI there. If I now do a Terraform plan, it shows me that there are no changes. It doesn't detect any differences. So what I'm going to try now is removing the IDs. Perhaps that will trigger a change, because syntactically it looks correct to me. But it detects a difference, so I just wanted to be sure of that. So now I'm going to rerun. That ID didn't work. You can't do an empty array there. It's not happy with that. So what I'll try this time is getting rid of the one that it exists there and try and get it to use this new one. Rerun. That's completed. So yeah, now this is the bicep one. Has it swapped it over? No. Still has the bicep one. So something strange is going on. I'm going to go offline and check out what. Okay, so I hit F5 on the browser and now it does have that new one. Maybe that was the problem all along, is that the Azure portal wasn't refreshing correctly. It's usually pretty good, that's why I didn't suspect it, that could be the cause. But I'm going to come back in here and uncomment this, rerun that, do a hard refresh and see if that shows up with the two UMIs. That's done with the two. Come back here, we'll just check to see if this refresh remains non-functional. Okay, and I'll just try a full hard refresh. Any difference? There we go. There's something wrong in the Azure portal, so just be wary of that refresh button. I'm sure they'll probably fix it by the time you see this video, but okay. There really was no problem with our original syntax, and that is how you get your two UMIs added to your app service. Now be careful, now that you've got two UMIs, two identities, when in your code, you need to explicitly use, tell your code which one to use. So when you're writing out code to set up your client to the storage account, you need to say use this UMI. Now in this show, which is the follow-on show for these IaC ones, where I create an app, .NET application, it's just a simple API. I go through how to fix that problem. So if that's helpful to you, then check it out. But yeah, just be careful. Now you've got two, you will have to be clear about specifying which one to use. So the last thing I want to do is specify an environment so that we can reuse the infrastructure as code to initially create dev, get it set up how we want, and then create UAT and production. And we know that it's a replica of what we set up in dev. So I'm going to go back to ChatGPT for this because it's all the way through the code that it generated for us. So I want to be able to specify an environment, e.g. dev or UAT, and can you replace all instances of that as a variable? And that should make the necessary changes. And after it's generated, I'll come back. So the first thing we need to do is grab the variable environment, chuck that into the variables file, and then we want to reference that variable, and the syntax for that is this $var. I'm just going to go through and replace that. So wherever we've got a dev, I want var environment in the curly brackets and the $sign. So replace, yep. And that's it. And what we should be able to do is just simply rerun it again, and nothing should change because it's still using dev. So we'll confirm that when it completes. And it completed very quickly because it didn't have to do anything. So let's come back to our resource group again, do a hard refresh, and we've got our two UMIs, KeyVault Storage Account, App Service Plan, and App Service. So then what we should be able to do super easily is replace this out. Now this would be something you'd pass through in a pipeline variable, for example. I'm just going to show you changing it manually here. Now what it's going to do, it'll take a bit longer this time, is it will create a UAT environment for us. And yes, it did create a UAT environment. It's all of the resources there. But I made a good for demonstration mistake because I didn't change the resource group name. So it's still dev. So what it's actually done is deleted all the dev services and resources because they're no longer defined in the terraform. And then went ahead and created all the UAT ones, which isn't the desired effect. So obviously here is where the problem is. The mouse is going to be in the way. There we go. So the default resource group at the top there is still dev. So I'm fairly sure that we can still use this way to reference the variable, the environment name. We can use this here. Rerun that, and now we'll actually get a UAT resource group with UAT resources. Oh, okay. Variables are not allowed there, so that's disappointing. Gonna have to just simply manually change it in both spots. There may be a trick to do that in Terraform. Just I'm not familiar with it. If I do discover how to do it, I'll add something to the show notes. Okay, so we'll try that again. And when it did go ahead and when I ran it before, it took forever to delete the KeyVault. And keep in mind that that dev KeyVault now needs to be purged. So I'll go ahead, I'll create both of them, and then I'll check back in and I'll show you the end result in Azure, the desired end result. So that's created the UAT resource group and the UAT resources, but I've discovered a problem. we only have one state file. And so if we were to do what I suggested before and just simply swap this out to dev and then this one to dev, we're not going to get dev added and have the two different environments. With the state file, it's just going to simply replace everything. So that's, again, not ideal. I chucked that at ChatGPT as well. How do I ensure the terraform state remembers all the environments? There's a few different options. Workspaces is one. And then we've got separate state files, and if you've got a different state backend. So I'm going to go with the workspace environment. So terraform workspace new dev and uat and prod. Let's see what that looks like. New dev uat. I'll just do the 2. So I've got 2, and I don't know if anything's happened there, but now we go terraform workspace. Does that show us? Show, terraform workspace show. We're in uat. So terraform workspace, I select dev. Okay, so now we're in there. We can ditch this environment variable. Just find all the places that that's used. Get rid of it from here. And instead of using that, I don't know if we can use terraform. Instead of using var.environment, we use terraform workspace. So we'll try that. I don't think it'll work there. We'll give it a go. Terraform workspace. And in our main, we want to go replace that with that. Probably just go through and do them all. There we go. Rerun. There. Variables not allowed. Yes. So, oops. Right. All right, so I was unsure how to use the Terraform workspace here. So I did what we're doing in this show and asked ChatGPT, look, how do I use that in the variables? For example, if I want to set the resource group name with that as a prefix. So you can't use it in TF, but it says to still define the variable here in variables.tf, and then you can set it in locals in main.tf. So if we come back over here, come back to our main, I guess, at the top. Do this, and that should be happy. Let's run it and see. Okay, it's asking me to enter a value. That's not desired because we want to run this in a pipeline eventually. I'm just going to Control-C that one. So yeah, it's saying no value for the required variable because we took that out of there. So there's a step that I'm missing. Now that I've put it in locals, I can't reference resource group from var dot. I need to reference it from local dot. So everywhere we see this, we'll replace it with this. There's just one, no more. Okay, and try again. No, it's still getting asked to enter a value. But it's var.resource group name that it's looking for. So I'm just going to guess that maybe we shouldn't have it there. It's not necessary. Get out of that. Try again. Yeah, seems happier. So it wasn't necessary to keep it here in the variables.tf. You can just define it in locals, and from that, because you're in the main.tf, you can access the variable. All right, I'm just going to let that run. And that has completed. Looks like it's completed without error. So we'll just have a look for dev dash. And there's our dev resource group with all the necessary resources. And now I'll just rerun it with, I'll switch to the UAT. So terraform workspace, select UAT, and terraform workspace show, definitely in UAT, rerun. Now this time it shouldn't go and delete all of the dev ones which we just created. So then we'll have dev and UAT side by side, which is the desired result, and we'll know that they're exactly the same apart from the names. They've all been created exactly the same. Okay, so we've hit a problem, and this is probably it's saying that it already exists, and that would be because it's created in the old state file. So I'll just go and delete that resource group and then recreate. That has just completed. So uat-rg-azureiac is the resource group. It's got all of our resources in it, and the dev-rg Azure IaC is also there. So there we have it, both environments created. One thing to note, using Terraform, you don't get anything in this deployments tab. If you use bicep or ARM templates, then you get a history of your changes, of your deployments here. And it also shows you the errors, and it's quite useful to see the inputs and outputs. So just consider that if you're choosing your tech. If you're going to Azure, bicep is probably the better choice. But of course, whether or not something is in here is not the only thing to consider. All right. There's one more Terraform command that I think is worth noting, and that is destroy. Obviously, you need to consider what environment, what workspace you're currently logged into, which is UAT for us right now. And if you run Terraform destroy, it will tell you all of the resources it's going to destroy, and then it will give you a chance to say no. And when you confirm, it'll go and delete them all. Now that's really useful if you're just playing around, exploring things. Do clean up after yourself, because all this stuff might not cost a lot of money, but it can add up very quickly. So do clean up after yourself. And plus, if you create something and you don't touch it for months and you come back, you you have to ask the question, do I need this or do I not need this? You answer that question straight away and just get rid of it if you don't need it. That'll take a little while. I'll just let that run. In this show, we created some Azure resources, the app service, which connects to the storage account, KeyVault, our User Assigned Managed Identity. And we created all those resources using Terraform. Being not familiar with Terraform and leveraging ChatGPT to accelerate the process of learning and getting to an end result. And we saw that ChatGPT is imperfect, but it does do a great job of giving you a solid starting point and makes it easy and helps you to work through the errors that that you find. So I hope that's useful. I hope you found that this will save you some time. There's a lot of the errors that we saw, things that you might run into along the way. So yeah, go check out. The other thing is check out the show. I'll put a link up here, which has the follow-on, creates the API, a very simple API which runs in the app service to test that what we've created actually works. So check that out, and there's source codes available. And yeah, so that's it. I hope you found that interesting. Be kind, be curious, and go create something great.